And now for a message from our sponsor, LookingGlass Cyber Solutions. Please welcome Mary Yang, Chief Marketing Officer of LookingGlass Cyber Solutions, in conversation with Dr. John Zangardi, an advisory board member at LookingGlass and president of Red Horse Corporation. Mary, over to you.
Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm super excited today to be sitting down with Dr. John Zangardi to hear some of his thoughts on cybersecurity and that intersection of the federal government and critical infrastructure. Just to start, Dr. Zangardi, with your expertise in technology and digital transformation and your background across both the public and private sectors, what do you see as the main reason that so many organizations continue to struggle with getting cybersecurity right?
Well, hey, Mary, first off, thanks for having me here today. It's a privilege to be able to speak to everyone and share some of my thoughts. So there is an increasing complexity of networks. Some of it is stemming from the work from home, or WFM, the proliferation of mobile devices, the proliferation of IoT, the movement to the cloud, the number of applications out there. So you have this very complicated environment that's increasingly becoming more and more complicated as more becomes available to be put on the network. So as you're sitting back and you're wondering, how do I deal with this complexity and not being overwhelmed by it and the number of alerts that are coming in? There's a role here for increased visibility into the attack surface and understanding the endpoints and the risk associated with those endpoints. Things like, hey, who has access beyond what is necessary for them to do their job? Who is at home working from home, but is really at Starbucks on a network that you have no idea where it is and how vulnerable it is. Those kinds of things are so important and so hard for a CIO and CISO to get their arms around. But really when it comes down to it, staff is big, and sometimes staff is pushed to the limits in terms of their time. And there's the vulnerability of emails, phishing attempts, and making sure that your staff is trained and alert to deal with that. All it takes is one wrong click and you're going to have a bad day on your network. The other piece is cyber hygiene, the lack thereof, the complexity of your network, knowing what's out there, having that total asset visibility. So in summation, what I would say is complexity, the proliferation of so many devices, work from home and all that, has really led to a problem with understanding your assets, the visibility, and your risk posture out to the endpoints to include all of your attack surface. So it's a pretty tough environment for folks to get their arms around. And what CIOs and CISOs need are the tools in the cyber environment that are simple and easy to use, that don't provide false positives, and help use, through the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence, cut down on the time-consuming tasks, such as a lot of alerts that will overwhelm your SOC team. Things like that could really help in the future to reduce the problems associated with today's network environment.
Do you think there's one simple change that federal government or critical infrastructure organizations could make to improve that visibility of the attack surface?
Yeah, there's plenty of tools out there right now that provide endpoint visibility that will tell you if your endpoints have been patched, if your endpoints are connected to the network. There are plenty of tools that are out there. One of the things that they should be looking at are tools that provide resiliency. So on one piece, you have tools. The other piece, you have what you can do. I grew up a naval aviator, and one of the things that you do in aviation is you practice for that bad day. You know your emergency procedures, because when the engine's on fire, you don't have time to page through the book and look up step one, step two. You've got to know what to do. And that's something similar that needs to be done in running a network in cyber. So when a breach happens, you should be able to have practiced your responsive. How do you go about determining what happened? How do you go about responding to it? And how do you go about recovering? Each one of those requires a plan that's been exercised and put into play. So it's a mix of things. It's the tools, it's the people and how they're trained, that they have a plan that's executable. But I gotta take it one step further. One of the things I noticed from all my time in government and industry is, and this is, I'm making fun of my particular profession, we talk in acronyms, and a lot of folks have no idea what we just said. And if you're a very senior person, whether you're on a board of directors or you're a secretary or deputy secretary of a department, you might be intimidated to ask deeper questions because you wouldn't even understand the answer. It's incumbent upon the CIOs and CISOs to explain what they're doing in English and explain the risk. For example, if this network goes down, you'll no longer be able to process customs. So that means anything coming into the United States at this port of entry will back up. So something that they understand in those terms, the probability and the consequence, just like the old, risk posture cubes.
Thanks so much, John. I appreciate that. So to close out this conversation, what do you think is one takeaway that you think the viewers watching this could act on this week to improve their cybersecurity?
Oh, it's really simple. Cyber hygiene, multi-factor authentication, patching, making sure that you've got configuration and compliance across your network. That's just basic. That's 101. But you really need to go further than that. You need to understand your attack surface. You need to understand what tools are on your system. How old are your laptops? How old are these things? Are they capable of handling modern software? And that's where you need to be moving. You should be moving towards constantly refreshing things to make sure that they're new and up to date with the latest standards. You would be surprised if you start looking at many networks that even though we think we're fully patched, you're probably not fully patched because sometimes endpoints are disconnected or the connectivity to the network is off. So understanding what's out there and having that visibility over your assets, asset management, configuration management is key. And the last thing I'll say is when you're looking at tools and when you're looking at procedures, you need to make sure you're building in resilience, and that resilience needs to promote visibility. It needs to promote remote patching. It needs to promote enforcement of compliance, and it needs to promote configuration and compliance control across your entire network.
Yeah, I think that's one of those reasons why patching continues to be hard across really every organization from a cyber perspective.
It is. And one of the things I've learned in life is if you focus sunlight on something, it usually gets fixed. So all you got to do is make a very simple spreadsheet to keep track of all the patches that are coming out. And when they're done, and boy, if people see they're falling behind, they usually heave ho and get on with it. At least that's been my experience.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Z. We really appreciate all of your thoughts, your expertise. Love chatting with you.
Thank you, Mary. Have a great day.
You too.